Hi, people. So I've been watching Friends. Um, Friends is a very familiar show to many people. It's a very well known show, even though it ended 19 years ago now. Incredible to think, 19 years ago, 2004. Um, but I'm a fairly big Friends fan. I know the show pretty well. I've got most of the episodes either on video or DVD. I'm watching it right now, actually. This is series 5, episode 720. Uh, I've got, merchandise, these mugs with each of the characters. That's Rachel, kind of feminine looking, but I've got the three guys as well. Um, all six characters. Yeah, so I'm a Friends fan. But I acknowledge the show wasn't perfect. Like any popular show, some episodes are going to be stronger than others, and some seasons would be stronger than others. But I want to talk a little bit about the approach that very woke people take to Friends, where they talk about being problematic and they micro-analyze all the faults in it. Well, let's be clear. The characters were not perfect. They all had their flaws. Joey was a womanizer. Monica could be quite controlling and bossy. Phoebe could be quite shallow, and I think she sometimes disguised that shallowness with her eccentricity. But I think she could be a little bit selfish and shallow. Let's see. Ross could be quite paranoid in terms of how he approached relationships and quite controlling. Rachel could be shallow and just as controlling as Ross. I think they had a pretty toxic relationship. Chandler had obvious insecurities. So all the friends, they all had shortcomings as people, but they also, this is what the woke people forget, they also all had redeeming points. They all show loyalty, they all show kindness, they all show compassion at various points throughout the show's run. Um, but what woke people are doing is just looking at the negative. They're not looking at all those positive points. Um, the thing about Friends, it was a show set in New York City about six young New Yorkers in their 20s and 30s, um, and their lives and loves. And I mean, I know people have compared it unfavorably to Seinfeld. Personally, I've seen a little bit of Seinfeld. It's probably the smarter show. It's probably a bit deeper. It's probably a bit more sophisticated. But frankly, I don't care. People say there would be no Friends without Seinfeld, but I argue Friends has a much bigger cultural impact. I mean, outside the United States, I'm not sure that Seinfeld is really that big. It certainly isn't big in the UK. I mean, Friends remains very popular in the UK, 19 years on. You can still buy merchandise here of an American show from 19 years ago. I think that says something. You certainly couldn't find Seinfeld merchandise. Also, Seinfeld was one guy, and Friends was, six characters. It just, I don't care that it wasn't as sophisticated, because the whole point, to me, comedy doesn't have to be deep and sophisticated and multi-layered. Sometimes it's just escapism. So I don't think by nature it should be taken too seriously. That's the whole point about comedy. It's escapism. And that's what I would say to woke ideologues about Friends. Looking back now, sometimes Joey's womanizing is dismissed as it's part of his character, and it would be an issue in the Me Too era, and sometimes it is unacceptable the way he behaves. It is disrespectful to women, and he's a hypocrite because he gets upset if women treat him that way. But you also see the other side of him. He's loyal to his friends. He's genuinely compassionate at times, and although he's a womanizer, he's never malicious. He never physically hurts women. Or this is not to condone his womanizing, but my point here is I just don't like the way the friends like. There's this post analysis. So this was a show from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, right? Um, I, by the way, watched Big Bang Theory subsequently because I wanted to watch a show that was a little bit more contemporary. That was late 2000s going into the 2010s. What kind of surprised me was that Big Bang Theory wasn't as PC as I thought it might be for a contemporary comedy show. But to woke people, even Big Bang Theory would be problematic because you had um, the character of Howard, who was kind of the womanizer character in Big Bang Theory. But I like the fact, for example, they had racial jokes within the show, but it was kind of mutually aimed between Rajesh and the white characters. It was kind of mutual, so it wasn't like picking on Rajesh. It was Friends was criticised for its lack of diversity. Because all the characters were white. Well, Joey and Monica, excuse me, Ross and Monica were Jewish, so was Rachel. Joey was Italian American. Now, Italian Americans historically have had persecution. Um, and that's realistic enough for New York City and Italian American and Jewish Americans. So um, maybe they could have had a few more minority characters. There was one point where Ross dated a black girl, another one where he dated a Chinese girl. Maybe they could have been a bit more diverse to be a bit more reflective of New York City. But when I heard that the Friends producers um, were actually talking about compensation, giving money to black universities as way of an apology for the lack of representation, I thought that is cringe. I mean, do what you want with your own money. You're a multimillionaire, but my goodness, don't bring us all down with this collective guilt. It's just absurd. I mean, how many white characters were there in Fresh Prince of Bel Air, which was a contemporary show, also a 1990s show? Um, I'm just so tired of the entertainment industry, movies, sitcoms, you name it, being inundated with this woke hypersensitivity. Like, let's do the checklist of diversity. Let's do the checklist of female empowerment. Let's do the checklist of everything else. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things, by the way. But when you're, just totally trashing a show because it doesn't quite meet all those criteria, I think that's very unfortunate. Um, Yeah, and it's so obvious in the entertainment industry now. I mean, really, what I would say to people is, first of all, no one's forcing you to watch the show, but second of all, life is short. There's some comedy I don't like, okay, and I get that there may be certain storylines in Friends. For example, if you're gay, some of the gay jokes perhaps are a bit dated now. I can appreciate that. But I have a gay friend, and he doesn't seem to be overly offended by it, because he sees the other merits of the show. Um, Also, people, this is the irony, when people analyze this stuff from the past and say it's all problematic, they're forgetting that actually it wasn't as bluntly offensive as they think. For example, Chandler is perceived as being very insecure about being seen as gay. He's not gay, he's straight. But he's very insecure about his drag queen father. It's not really implied if the father has had a full sex change operation or not, but he's a drag queen. But as Monica pointed out, actually, he was a really good father. He was always there for you. He was a loving parent. And actually, it shows, I forget the character's name, but it shows that person as a kind, likable person. So that wasn't mocking them, that was mocking Chandler's insecurity. The joke was on Chandler, it wasn't on Chandler's dad. Um, and there's other examples of that where I think woke people get so hypersensitive that even when a show is calling out bigotry or prejudice in a clever way, they can't see it. They think it's that is the bigotry or prejudice in of itself, and I just think that's sad. I mean, certainly there's certain jokes and Friends that I probably think, yeah, that's a little bit dated, but I'm not going to condemn the show for that. I'm not going to say it's problematic, um, because attitudes change over time, and I would not want a situation where there was a show where, I mean, my goodness, what comedy is going to be left? Because if you have risky comedy is always going to be offensive to someone. You'd have to end up with a really, really super tame, innocent show that really didn't risk offending anyone, and then you'd have no comedy. Now, I've said before, I don't like cruel humor. I don't like humor that is really, really, for example, poking fun at human tragedy excessively. I think that crosses a line. I don't like it. So, I'm not saying all anything goes, and I'm not saying people have to agree with me about Friends. All I'm saying is that I think it's a little bit sad that people are micro-analysing entertainment from the past. I mean, my goodness, we're talking about the 90s and 2000s. If these people saw some of the British shows from the 70s, like Love Lie Neighbour, they would keel over. Love Lie Neighbour, if you don't know, focused on two neighbours, a black guy and a white guy, and the white guy was an absolute bigot. And the thing about the show was openly racist language was used throughout it. I personally thought it was okay, but the jokes got a little bit tired just because they were repetitive. But you know, I can imagine a young woke American watching that would absolutely keel over. They'd be mortified. Their head would explode of sheer shock if they think Friends is problematic. I mean, but the thing about Love Lie Neighbour was the joke was on the white racist. It was making him look stupid. Um, Played by the late Jack Smethurst. Um, I just think that people need to stop micro-analyzing everything. Um, because really, it just gets boring. I mean, just just see it for what it is. It's a bit of escapism. It's not meant to be taken too seriously. That's how I would say it. And I'm not saying everyone has to share the same humor, but I question if woke people have any sense of humor. Right? I'm not saying you have to find this funny, but I question, do they find anything funny? Because really, there's this very puritanical thing going on, um, and I don't like it. I personally don't like comedy that is specifically aimed at human tragedy. I think that's cruel. I've no time for it. I've no time for these sleazy stand-up comedians who are just gratuitously offensive. Nah, I've no time for that. But my goodness, if people are talking about Friends is problematic, really, it's a great show, and it wasn't perfect. The writing wasn't always perfect. I noticed some plot holes sometimes when I'm rewatching it. Um, but I just think people need to see it for what it is, in the sense of bit of escapism. And I'm just so tired of woke ideologues shackling the entertainment industry. I mean, the film industry is absolutely inundated with questions about representation. And I'm thinking it's from some fans, but it's also from actors themselves who, constantly lobby on this stuff. I'm thinking, you know what, you get paid a lot of money, your job is to entertain. I'm tired of this constant identity politics and representation, and it's boring. The entertainment industry, television and film, music, ultimately is about escapism. And people can say that this relates, that they can resonate with something, and I get that, I do understand that. But just this micro analyzing of it all the time, I mean, my goodness, just life is challenging. There's real problems in this world. There's war, there's famine, there's poverty, there's real problems in this world. The entertainment industry, take your pick. You can either like something or dislike it, but this micro analyzing, it's just, it really irritates me, actually, because I think it shackles the whole industry, and I do think it's affecting the industry. Let me know your thoughts.